Hi, friends. Today, we are going to be speaking about something that I care a lot about. I think it's a good topic of discussion in today's world as a gamer and as a social butterfly like I am. I want to discuss something called the dark triad. I'd like to construct an argument as to how the social construct of gaming, online competitive gaming specifically, feeds into narcissism and the dark triad traits of young people. This is my brother, Zach.
Yo, what's up, everybody?
We're siblings, so we have healthy debates all the time. Thank you, brother, for being here.
Get used to it. I think that all of you that hear this, that have had any experience with online gaming in any kind of competitive way will relate to this. I think it's very important that we define what the dark triad is.
Is a psychological theory of personality first published by Delroy L. Paulhouse and Kevin M. Williams in 2002. It is Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. Okay. It's called the dark triad because it's considered malevolent in nature.
They're antagonistic qualities. I think that gaming, it's concomitant with the internet in that those dark triad traits can make themselves far more prevalent in the way that you operate, in the way that you think, because it's so easy to hide who you are.
The anonymity of the internet makes it so easy to get away with these things. How many times have you seen someone toxic in a game and you think, oh, I want to do something about this. I want to get them banned. I want to write a report. You know, me and my team will ban them. Well, so what? If they get banned, they're just going to make another account.
There is very little consequence. And as we know, psychopathic people love to be able to do whatever they like without consequence. They even brag about it and they cheer about it. Eli. So we have a troll in this game. How convenient. Picked a support and says, I'm damage.
Oh, yeah.
Anti-Lord 59XX who picked another support.
And we can't just leave this game, even though we know they're trolling before we even start. Are there games that do IP bans?
I mean, like, it depends on what type of router you have, but you can get around IP bans if you know what you're doing. People have made thousands of hours of content of just how broken the League of Legends world is. You know, pay to play, yeah, it costs people money, but I mean, if you're going to act that way in a game, you clearly don't care if you're going to get banned. I would assume that the money makes it preventative from some people acting that way, but a lot of people just don't care. That's the thing. There's so many websites out there that have like account farming services where you can just buy an account for almost nothing, much cheaper than it would be to buy another copy of the game.
Why I brought that up is because you can put money and investments into characters, so it makes people stay in the toxic environment. They don't want to lose their characters that they paid for because someone else was throwing or whatever.
People have gone into it with the understanding that you're just going to be in a toxic, vitriolic environment no matter what. And so you kind of have to put yourself through that abuse to even play the game. And that's why I stopped playing League.
You do not really understand the problem with social discourse among people until you try to play a team-based game in this world. Having to rely on, you know, 5 or 6 other people to all do their respective roles to keep a team going in synergy is almost impossible to ask for at this point.
So like if we go down the list, like Machiavellianism, okay? I'm not going for the according to Hoyle definition. This is just what I know about them. Machiavellianism means that you believe that you should have executive absolute control to the point of, you know, even hurting people to get your end to whatever you want. Dictatorial control. So how do games promote Machiavellianism?
You're not playing this certain character. You need to play it this way, or I'm just gonna throw. If you're throwing, by the way, throwing, if someone doesn't know that term, is like losing the game on purpose in order to make a point, just to like be edgy, I guess.
That attitude of like, I'm just gonna throw if you don't do it the way I want, that's mutually assured destruction, right? That's a very common war tactic. I understand if you're playing in like a competitive team and you're trying to min-max or trying to find a way to make sure you're doing the optimal strategy. But when you're in a game and you have to do what you know wins or do what works best for you, that's a whole different thing. And there's so many people that just make these environments incredibly toxic because they want you to do things the way that they say to.
People will tell me, oh, you can't play that character, they're not meta, so therefore you're throwing, therefore reported. The amount of times where like they've tried to gang up on me with the other team, like people on my team that are supposed to be on my team to help win the game, they'll say, I don't like the character you're playing, therefore I'm gonna tell the other team to report you because I think you're throwing.
That is an example of Machiavellianism. You will even sacrifice your own well-being to hurt other people to get your way.
In any environment that is inherently competitive, it is going to be toxic. People think like, you know, money, reputation, or their rank is on the line, so it just brings out the worst in people. which is ridiculous because it's only a game. Why you have to be mid? In a competitive game where we want our whole team to obviously do well because we want to win, we're going to talk about who's not doing their best, but there's no constructive criticism anymore, it feels like.
I don't even necessarily think that the game itself is what promotes the toxicity. I think the people who either run the game or the people playing the games are the ones who cause the problems. And when I look at games like League of Legends we were talking about a while ago, I start thinking of these systems that all the toxic people have worked really hard to circumvent, but all the people that are just trying to play normally get punished for. Like, I cannot count the amount of times I've seen people get chat muted in League of Legends because they are responding to people who are actively being toxic in ways that circumvent the things that they've put in place automatically to make people not be toxic.
DPS diff, support diff. It's meant to say there is a difference in that role compared to the other team, and that it is the fault of that role for losing the game.
Because that's not against the rules. Saying that there's a diff could be helpful, because you could be saying, well, since our support isn't as good as the other support, we need to compensate. So that could be considered a constructive comment. But what it really has become is a way for people to be toxic and say, mid diff, you suck. And so now if someone, for example, says, hey, no, it's not a diff, this is what's going on, and you start directly addressing people saying that they're toxic, you're being mean, or you're going to report them, then you're the one that gets in trouble. As a matter of fact, Mobile Legends, if you say in chat that you're going to report someone for the way they're acting, you get chat banned because you're trying to rally people to gang up on them. If you say the word noob in chat, you get chat banned. So now in there, everyone calls each other nabs. And the reason that they can get away with that is because the word nab is a real word. Noob is like vernacular. So now everyone just calls each other nabs, and it circumvents the filter. The people who run these games try so hard to micromanage the speech of players to prevent toxicity that it encourages the people with these psychopathic traits to circumvent them to continued ways to show their toxicity in the game, and the people that try to fight it get in trouble instead.
And don't even get me started on Dead by Daylight, where it's 4 survivors versus 1 killer. That's another social game that creates the dark triad, because people take these games very seriously. Their abilities in these games, if that is attacked, people will take it so personally that they lash out and project any insecurity into toxicity represented through their passive-aggressive comments or straight up throwing the game in general.
That's not even getting into the whole notion that like just playing killer is narcissistic in and of itself. The idea that the world revolves around you and that everything is built around you and that all social strata, every action that people take should work to your interest.
Right.
Like just playing the killer role, it contains so many dark triad traits in and of itself. You're literally trying to ruin the game experience for all the other people by killing them. That game actively encourages people to be toxic and narcissistic. And when you watch killer streamers, not all of them, but many streamers who are killers, they're incredible narcissists, and they brag about how, oh yeah, you guys suck, you don't have anything on me, and it's all about my killer game, like me. It's all about drawing attention onto you. It is narcissistic.
Dead by Daylight, the most toxic game I've ever played. The killer can see the survivors' names and like their Steam profiles and everything, but the survivors in the pregame lobby can't see the killer. There used to be this third-party program that would like bypass that, so you could see who you're up against. It would notify you when you would go up against certain players that you could block on the program. So like, I'd never used it, but I had friends who did. The survivors would dodge those lobbies and not play with the killers that had a bad reputation of like letting people die slowly and wasting their time, stuff like that, just toxic behavior. You know, that's something that someone in the community made to try to bypass the toxicity and make a better experience for people so they would avoid toxic players, but that was eventually patched out and banned.
Almost like these gaming companies want to foster somewhat of a toxic community because that makes money.
And games like Overwatch, team-based competitive first-person shooters are another ball game because you have to rely on other people other than yourself, which might be why the uprising of battle royales has come to be so popular. It's survival of the fittest. People are so narcissistic that they just want to start playing games where it's just me against the world. I don't need anyone else.
We haven't even started talking about sandbox games yet.
What's that really toxic game? Rust?
I think my very first example, my first run-in with a Dark Triad trait was on the original EverQuest, the game that came out in 1999. I played that game as a teenager because the game was very social. The economy was completely built by the people. So EverQuest was all about you building up your own character. And if you wanted like a super rare item, you would have to get a group that camped that item because the enemy that even drops the item might only spawn once every 9 or 10 hours. And there weren't timers for this kind of thing. There was no way to know exactly when an item would drop or when you get it. So people would actively do things to exploit other people's abilities to get items that they worked for in the game, just to keep other people from being able to loot the enemies that have the really rare items on them, because if you get the credit for the kill, you're the only one who can loot it.
Okay, so that's a great example. I'm going to interject here. You were only 15 when that happened. You were a minor, you were a child, you were an impressionable child.
Absolutely. Why do you think that all these online multiplayer games are directly targeting aesthetics that appeal to children? Roblox, Fortnite, all these games have aesthetics that would be more generally appealing to children. And yes, games like Super Mario Brothers doesn't look like an adult game, but Super Mario Brothers was single player. You sat around on a couch with your friends and your family and you played that game. Now these games are appealing to children in a way that pulls them to the internet.
Exactly, and that's the difference of when we were growing up.
So I have a really good friend of mine, and he's got a family of kids. The kids played Plants vs. Zombies.
I love that game.
My friend had mistakenly stored his credit card on the Xbox account because he and his family watched movies. So because the game made it really easy for kids to go through and purchase these items to get to certain things in the game, his son unknowingly had run their credit card up $400. These games are literally funneling children into doing microtransactions when they don't even realize it yet.
This brings me back to an essay that I wrote in college, and I fought for the idea of like video games are just, they are not reality and people can distinguish reality from fantasy. I really did fight for that back in the day because I had no evidence otherwise. It's an interesting thing because I remember in college trying to talk about how playing video games does not affect people negatively and that it can affect people positively. I still stand by that at the time. I think I wrote that in 2009. I just think that people are a lot more impressionable these days in general. And maybe it's because I'm older and I see the big picture of things and I've seen social discourse degrade and just implode on itself. I don't know, maybe I'm just a boomer now. Obviously, playing games has great benefits for people. You know, playing games with active storylines that make you think critically about things, like that's great. I guess I am kind of making the argument that certain social elements of video games have been so tainted that it can affect impressionable minds. Video games are part of my soul, man. I grew up playing video games. There aren't the Dark Triad traits in couch co-op games or, you know, most single player games even. There's competitiveness, I guess, in like Smash Brothers and like maybe Mario Party or Mario Kart if you have anger problems already. But online social games definitely pushes people more towards a toxic environment, and that can get to kids who have impressionable minds. And I hate that because I'm having some cognitive dissonance right now. I want you guys to know this. I look back on that essay, I think I have it up on my blog, okay? That's how old this is. I had a blog. But it was a different time. There are so many people that are kids that play these online games, and they are being groomed into thinking that not only is this behavior acceptable and okay, but that it gets you what you want.
And now what you have is the extension of that through games like Rust. I will not touch that game because I have read so many accounts and heard so many stories. You start a new game of it, your character gets kidnapped by a bunch of people carrying around swastika looking things and make you like do things with your character and that they can blackmail against you in the real world, because like they'll say, oh, we're going to put you in our prison and not let you leave until you've said, you know, Heil, you know who, and that kind of thing. And that game has just become a haven for Machiavellianism, like, and for narcissism and psychopathy, and people pack together and group together and do that stuff carte blanche in those games. It's horrible. EVE Online is another example. You can just ruin people in that game with no consequence. If you pod someone, you destroy their ship, and you kill their character, they lose everything. So you can literally just destroy their entire year of playing the game. You can destroy it all at once if you want to. And so then you get gaslit, and they say, well, you shouldn't have been carrying your stuff around if you didn't want to get killed. And yeah, so these types of games promote this kind of behavior.
As Bethesda fans know already, Fallout 76 was a burning pile of trash, but there were so many instances where high-level players would just kill and loot low-level players for no particular reason except the fact that they were bored and they wanted to see what they had on them. And it really kind of took away from new players wanting to join the game in the first place. And, you know, Bethesda fans were already there because they felt the commitment to the series, right? So you go in and say, okay, this game sucks. It was released before it was finished. Now I'm getting literally destroyed by people who have power leveled a month after it's released. This isn't fun anymore. And so that's another example I've had personally. And oh my God, Dark Souls.
If your thought process here is get good, when you're talking about something where someone who doesn't have the ability to get good until they've been way later in the game, like Fallout 76, and you kill them for sport, where does that thought process come from?
You can't tell someone to get good either because there are so many cheaters, which brings me back to Dark Souls. I know people that have said they just run around as invaders. I know for a fact that there are cheaters in that game, forcing items in your inventory that you can't get rid of, that hurt you. That happened to you, right, Zach?
Somebody gave me a curse that completely ruined my single player experience because the only way to get the curse removed was to do something that I wasn't even able to do at that point in the game yet, outside of the online element, even my single player game, because there was no way to remove the curse until later in the game that I hadn't even gotten to yet.
Dark Souls is notoriously difficult already, and the fact that they have the invader element in there is questionable at best. But people will go to places where they know that lower level players will spawn, and they will wait there, and they will mess with them. They will kill them and loot them in those areas that are either low level or levels that are really hard, where you're already PvE, where you're already fighting against the environment, like bogs, where you can just die so quickly from the smoke and water around you. They will wait there, and they'll kill you there just to get their kicks and giggles. That is the Dark Triad.
All these big streamers that have been caught aimbotting, it's like Dunning-Kruger. They're using an aid to make people think that they're better than they are, and they convince themselves that they are better than they actually are, and they're garnering an audience out of it because they're so narcissistic that they believe that even if they can't play the game as well as they think that they can, they still deserve the credit. It's just fall from grace because the world goes, well, wow, you're a total fraud. But in the meantime, those same people that cheated are not going to give the money back of all the subs. Another thing the online gaming world fosters is cheating, and that cheating only enables people who are Dark Triad anyway. I know that you have your game genies and your pro action replays and all those types of things from back when you were a kid, and you could put in cheat codes to make games easier, and like video games have console commands. That's totally different. But when you start implementing those things into things that hurt other people to prop yourself up, it does no good for anybody except yourself. There's this concept in card games called slow rolling, and it comes from poker. In poker, if you have the best hand and it comes to the end of the hand where everyone's supposed to show their hand and see who wins, if you're against another person and they have a better hand than you and it's their opportunity to show their hand and they wait and waste everyone's time and then flip their hand over and they have the best, they do that with the intention of making the person who is losing the hand feel like they might have a chance to win when they don't, just to make them mad. It's like rubbing salt in the wound that someone's already about to lose a lot of money. True story. I've seen someone get up and pull a knife on somebody because he got slow rolled for like $2,000. The way that correlates to Magic is online. What people will do is they will wait until their timer runs out almost completely and then play the card that beats you that they have in their hand. And so it's like slow rolling, but on the internet, you can't do anything about it. You just have to take it. You can't even report people for that. But in live Magic, if it's proven, if you have a way that you can win the game immediately and you don't do it, the opponent can call the judge over and say, hey, this person is stalling or slow rolling or whatever, and the judge can, under certain circumstances, give them a game loss for it. But you can't do that in online Magic. Yet another example of how the internet gaming culture fosters a toxic environment. Most of these Dark Triad traits are either easily pointed out in society or they're overtly discarded in society. So people who have a lot of these traits will go to the internet to be able to express them or to show those sides of themselves.
There are some people that play video games as an outlet. And I have heard that people would rather have competitive games, and therefore maybe this could go into like how people act in these games as an outlet for their toxicity or their quote unquote frustrations, rather than letting that out on people in the real world. That's like the argument. To that, of course, you would say, well, that would eventually lead you to being toxic in the real world, right? Or do you think that it's good for these people to have an outlet on the internet rather than doing it outside?
I don't think that's an excuse. You don't take your traits that are problems out on people on the internet that don't deserve it. Character is who you are when no one's looking. So if you've got to use your terrible traits out on the internet, then that is what files do. They can't children in the real world and get away with it, so use the internet. There's no excuse for that.
I agree with you. Oh, I have frustrations that I like to get out when I play competitive games because it's better than projecting them outwards in the real world. And that just sounds like a slippery slope to me. I don't know.
It's coping. It's like rationalizing. That's all you're doing, is you're just trying to justify your own bad behavior by saying it makes you better. With respect to competition and playing things that are competitive, if you take that element away for a moment and look at it as if it's a game, is it a fun experience to take away someone else's enjoyment for your own gain? If you say yes to this, then you are among the dark triad, because you are putting your own gains that cause other people harm above the mutual enjoyment of a game. A game is designed to be fun first. I love competitive games. I'm a Mythic ranked Magic the Gathering player. I'm a competitive person, but I also know when things are fun. But if we decide to go into a big tournament, yeah, things are going to get competitive.
They keep you stuck in these toxic games with Skinner boxes. Oh, buy our new skin and then you'll feel better.
If you get the battle pass, you're getting $30 in free value when they are the ones who set the value in the first.
There is a whole video that I'll reference here. Basically goes over the business marketing plans that these companies have in order to manipulate you into keeping you upset in order for you to spend money on their product.
He said, an oil magnate and a stockbroker go to war. Who wins? The gaming company.
Right.
If you can monetize games and make them competitive, you can make people hate each other while you strip the money away from them in the name of competition.
Pay to win, forehead. You know, release a character that's OP as heck, and then after people have bought it, then they will nerf it.
And that's what this whole DDA thing basically proves. Angry, frustrated gamers spend more money than those who aren't. Because another thing that video said is you can't have a game that is too skill-based. Online skill-based games are the death of your game's economy, because then people will just get good and you won't make any money. There is this crossroads of how much you can get people to spend and keep them frustrated enough to continue to play. That's what game cheats do, right? They take your wallet by giving you the tool to play the game better than everyone around you and make you feel like you're better. Gaming companies intentionally release new characters, new cosmetics with imbalances in them to encourage people to buy them and then scale them back. And a lot of times they'll make it to where the only way you can get the new character is by using real currency on it. You can't free to play your way into getting the new characters. In the game company itself, that is completely messed up and manipulative and monetizing at the same time.
The whole business practice of video gaming in this day and age is extremely unethical.
All the dark triad traits that people openly expose in these gaming environments causes the collective to start distrusting one another more. Because if you spend 4 or 5 hours of your day playing video games and it's full of toxic, evil people who are trying to ruin your experience, well, then you're going to start thinking, wait, these people are out in the real world, right? And those people clearly exist, but now you don't know who they are. And all of a sudden, you have a healthy distrust of the general public. So what's the best thing to do to stay away from it? Stay at home. Stay on your computer.
Or it affects you in the opposite way, where you think this is the standard of social interaction, so therefore I can go out in the world and be a complete psychopath.
My thesis here is that these game companies have intentionally fostered these in-game mechanics that make it almost impossible to consistently improve at a game and force people to take their frustrations out on each other in the communities. And that makes people who already show dark triad traits flourish, because that's the environment they love, the toxic, despotic, angry, bitter world. In World of Warcraft and in every MMO, there are raids. You have like a bunch of people taking on a really big boss. So it took coordinating 40 people that were all geared up enough to fight these big bosses. You had to do this 20-hour quest. The game wouldn't even let you try it more than once per week or something like that. The character named Leroy Jenkins yells, "Leroy Jenkins!" and runs in the middle of Onyxia, pulls the enemy, and gets the whole group wiped because Leroy Jenkins went in and just decided to ruin it for everybody.
There is an argument to be made that this event was the beginning of the end.
What it did is it glorified dark triad traits, because no matter how you think of the Leroy Jenkins thing, he was AFK when the team was trying to talk about the strategy, and then he just came back when they were planning what to do, runs in and throws for everybody.
Creates this division in players, therefore a division in the idea community.
It says, well, it's okay to ruin everyone else's gaming experience. It's okay to just throw and be destructive and toxic. Not only is it okay to do that in the game and affect the people around you, society is going to think it's funny or desirable or cool or cute. And from that point on, I remember when I was playing World of Warcraft, we had to have punishments for people that had been proven to throw raids. It got that bad, and now it's everywhere in gaming culture. Of course it happened before. Games were toxic before that, but I do think that the Leroy Jenkins phenomenon is a big part of why gaming culture has become so narcissistic, because there was a precedent set with something that went viral.
Yeah, and going viral now is different than it was before, right?
Him getting 1 million billion views for doing that was massive. And so that was, I think, a huge contributing factor, because then it became, oh, who can one-up Leroy Jenkins? How can you do something that draws more attention or that's more toxic? And I'm so bitter about this and passionate about it because, like Ellie said, games are my childhood. Games are my life. I'm a musician because I played video games as a kid. That's why I'm a professional musician.
I think it's a discussion that is relevant since gaming is such a huge industry. Video games are an integral part of so many people's lives, especially after the pandemic, everyone being forced to be inside. I think that also contributes to the rise in toxicity of online interactions.
You know, I was actually thinking about it, and I remember when League of Legends had the tribunal system. Basically, if you had a perfect record, no reports, all that kind of thing, you were given the ability to join this group where you could read player reports and punish people based upon what those reports said. But I think that part of the problem here is that so many of these systems have gone to AI. These AI are not able to look at things outside of the framework by which they're coded to. And I think what needs to happen to solve toxicity in games is that there needs to be more human interactions, and humans are expensive. I've heard that people that work on the teams that have existed of like toxicity and stuff like that, they've had mental issues. It's a lot to wake up every day and see someone, you know, have to read a chat of somebody calling somebody all these horrible names and attacking them. It's hard to read reports of children being preyed on by adults. It affects you negatively. So I can also understand why that's not necessarily a desirable job, and there would need to be safeguards for the people who do it to protect their mental health, and that's expensive too. So why not just have an AI make some predetermined decision based on machine learning and algorithms, and if you have a few false negatives, then deal with it. But what that does is it causes people to lose faith in the product and lose faith in the companies themselves, and that's how we are where we are. I mean, you know, when things reach on a mass scale and you've got billions of people doing an activity like gaming, there's just no way. There aren't enough people in the world to police everybody. Also fosters those types of environments, because the more people doing it, the more you can hide in anonymity.
I mean, Overwatch is literally, we have a video on this, putting in like AI banning systems. It's just gonna get Orwellian and totalitarian, and it's gonna be all in the name of safety. What is the solution?
Start making less games with an online component. But the thing is, from all of the online games and how they're infinitely monetizable, until that stops, the toxicity is only going to get worse, because they don't care about the effect it has on the world as long as their shareholders are happy and as long as their pockets are growing. Another thing that I think irritates me about all this is that instead of taking this toxicity head on, they're all virtue signaling by doing things like replacing all the American flags with pride flags, as if that's going to lower the amount of toxicity in the game. There's been so many games that have done that. You know, their argument is, well, it exposes all these bad people.
I mean, maybe it exposes the homophobes, but like it doesn't expose the sociopaths who go along with the narrative in order to hide their own agenda.
Well, those are the ones that spend the money on the game. They need that demographic.
I guess the only way to avoid feeding into this trap is to know what these game developers are doing, know these are the facts, and continue to play these games if you have fun with your friends. I mean, I'm still going to play because I have fun with it, and there's no really going back now that we're here. You just have to remind yourself the social games, online competitive games aren't really there for just your entertainment or for you to have fun anymore. They're to make a profit. Remember that you're a consumer and don't let it manipulate your emotion. By all means, I recommend taking time off from games, off of screens in general. You know, if things start to get to you on a personal, emotional level, feel free to leave suggestions on what you think might help. Life is strange. I think we covered a lot of good topics here. I hope everyone has a good night. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.